Welcome, everyone. My name is Chloe Beesham. I'm the Program and Outreach Manager at the Dun&Dishponde Queens Innovation Center, and I will be moderating today's Startups Showcase session for Homecoming. So I'd just like to firstly acknowledge that Queens is situated on the traditional land of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, and we are very fortunate to be able to live, work, and play on these lands. I'd also like to let you all know that this event's being recorded and it can be watched afterwards. During this event, you'll also be able to use the chat and the Q&A features, which are just on the right-hand side of the video screen. And I'd just like to thank Ashley, our ASL interpreter, and Nicole, who's behind the scenes planning Homecoming, for making this event possible today. So in 2021, Queen's University was named the Entrepreneurial University at the Dishponde Symposium for Innovation and Entrepreneurship in Higher Education. And this is a pretty big honor because it recognized the work of over 30 units at Queen's, including our center, the Dun&Dishponde Queen's Innovation Center, or DDQIC, who are providing students, staff, and faculty, Kingston residents, and global citizens as well, with opportunities and the skills they need to start their own entrepreneurial ventures and to solve some of the most burning problems in the world. In this showcase event, entrepreneurs from DDQIC's programs will pitch their startups to you and answer your questions about their journey to entrepreneurship so far. So first, I'd like to call on Ryan Job, who is the co-founder of Remote Optometry. Remote Optometry was part of the first cohort of the Build to Scale Health Innovation Program that is an incubation program intended to support startups responding to unmet needs in healthcare. So yeah, I'll invite Ryan to share his screen and pitch to you the problem and solution that remote optometry is bringing to market.
Thank you, Chloe. You can see the screen and hear me well?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Well, hello, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to be up here. My name is Ryan Job. I'm a MECEng Size 17 alumni, and I'm the co-founder of Remote Optometry alongside my brother, Dr. Alexander Job. Remote Optometry is a telemedicine software and service platform that enables people to receive full comprehensive eye exams anywhere in the country from an optometrist that's not physically located in the practice. 3 years ago, Alexander, my brother on the left, returned from a clinical optometry rotation in rural Alaska. In his time there, he spent several months providing eye care in small remote towns that were only accessible by bush plane. The patients he saw were lucky if they had an optometrist visit even just once a year. The high cost of flying medical staff and equipment makes the lack of professional care very common in rural areas, and as a result, many preventable eye conditions are left undiagnosed and untreated, and in certain cases, it could lead to blindness. So since then, my brother and I have developed a software and health service solution that enables optometrists to see patients from afar. Picture it as a reverse telehealth situation where the doctor is remote and the patient's in the practice. With our system, a non-skilled technician is physically situated in a rural clinic. Patients who require an eye examination are guided by the technician through a series of ophthalmic machines that are integrated with our software. An optometrist working online remote controls various optical devices while simultaneously reviewing live uploads of a patient's eye health data in real time. The doctor then video conferences the patient and provides them with the necessary health plans and prescriptions. So for the first time in history, people living in remote or isolated areas of Canada can receive full comprehensive eye exams any day of the year. In addition to remote and isolated areas of Canada, our software and optometry service could eventually be utilized around the globe. eye care locations worldwide will soon have an economic means to provide ongoing and continuous doctor coverage for their patients year-round. Our first two sites have been operational since May of this year, with the third site currently being set up this month. For now, we're focusing on restricting our pilot model to rural BC, but we have plans to open up in Ontario and Alberta by the end of 2022. So far, through our platform, Alexander has provided full comprehensive eye exams to over 700 happy patients on the West Coast, all from the comfort of his home office in Toronto. COVID has put a spotlight on how virtual healthcare can be used to improve health outcomes for all people. I believe that everyone should have proper access to professional eye care, regardless of where they live. Our vision is your vision. Thank you for your time. And that's a wrap on our pitch. So any questions that I think Chloe was saying can just be put in the chat.
Yes, I'd invite people from the audience to post their questions in the chat or the Q&A, or if you'd like, you can even share your audio and video. I can ask a question to start.
Sure.
So Ryan, what have you learned from, I guess, this pilot with Alex and the 700 or so patients that have already used the service? What are some of the key learnings that you took away from that? And what do you need to do next to sort of expand this to other ophthalmologists?
And like there's an endless list of things that we've learned. I'll try and think of the maybe the top ones. Um, well, we've had many pivots since we started. I think one of the first things that we learned was to really focus in on one aspect first before like applying multiple different ways to do things. Like that applies to software and the locations themselves. We had set up a partial clinic here in Pickering, and we also had the one in BC at the same time. What we learned is that there's a lot of integration that has to happen interprovincially with software and with uh, like regulation that we had to deal with. So that's why we're narrowing our focus to just this area of BC for now, and then moving on. Oh, I see a question. Can it be used from Canada to the Caribbean? Yes, it can, but I guess that also extends to my last point. Um, there's a good amount of work that has to be done on the regulatory side and like patient confidentiality and software confidentiality before it can be outside of even just a province or the country itself. Like for example, all of the servers that we use are Canada based, and right now just West Coast based. There's like latency and then also the legalities of keeping all of that in one area. Can it be used in a patient with glaucoma? Yeah, so this is a common question that we get. Like, what are the limitations for it? Um, right now, we have an age limitation of 14 and up, and aside from that, there's no real diagnosis limitation. All of the testing that happens from our side is what also happens on an in-person doctor side. It's just some of the physical manual tasks that the doctor would do are replaced by expensive technology, to put it simply. There's like remote controllable machines, and then there's like high quality live video feed that's used. So the doctors use more of an like an analytical approach from reviewing the data from the patient remotely, whereas being there, but there's no limitation to what they can't see. In a lot of cases, the data that they get, for example, the retina photo of the back of the eye, with some of the new devices, new hardware, that's not what we don't focus on hardware, but some of the new hardware that we've put in is in very rarely in any optometry practice in the country because of how new and really expensive it is. And with that, they're able to see a lot more than what they could as an in-person doctor. So in some ways, it can even be better. And so
sort of
diabetic and hypertension. Sorry.
No, go for it.
Yeah, so and I'd answer that with diabetic and hypertension. That'd be more of a question for my brother. Unfortunately, he's seeing patients right now. I'm sure he'd love to answer that. But yeah, I'd say from my knowledge in his clinical practice, about 40% of patients that he sees have diabetes, and a good chunk of those also have hypertension. And so again, there's no real limitation as long as they have the right documentation and imaging and testing to diagnose and treat for those specific issues.
Awesome. Meredith in the Q&A is asking a question, and then we'll have Edward come on screen to ask probably our final question for this round. But we'll have more time at the end for more questions if there are any. So Meredith is asking, will access to stable internet service limit the places that the offices can be set up?
Yeah, so absolutely. They need a stable internet. One of the things that we're looking into is the areas where Starlink has started to be promoted into. So this is, and with Starlink, you'll have like high quality, very, very low latency, like internet access, better than what you'd get on like a cable here in Toronto, but in these rural areas. So we'd have to work with those areas that are set up with internet first. But yeah, for in a simple answer, that's one of the very basic conditions that need to be met is high speed internet does need to be installed there.
Great. And I believe Edward should be able to share your audio or video if you wanted to ask a question too. Hello.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi, Edward.
Hi, Edward. How are you doing?
Is she still trying to refresh it?
Yeah, now sound is coming. Yeah.
Oh, it's not coming on?
Yeah, it's coming now.
Oh, it is. Okay.
And we're even having a video.
Oh, good. And the sound is working?
Mm-hmm.
We can hear you.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay.
Thank
Are
you.
you all set then?
I believe so.
Okay. Enjoy the program.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
I know. Okay, let's continue and see what we can find.
Did you have a question for Ryan? Or did you want us to continue with the pitches?
What was your question?
Ryan just pitched and he's opening the floor to questions from the audience. Did you have a question for him, or should we move on to the next pitch?
I think you should just move on, please.
Okay, sounds great.
Called cannot be completed as dialed. Please
So
check
thank you so much, Ryan. We're going
problem.
to move on, and I would like to please invite Victor Sifiso Zaba from HEMPAD South Africa to join us. Hi, Victor. So Victor is the founder of HEMPAD South Africa and was also an award-winning member of the Jim Leach MasterCard Foundation Fellowship on Entrepreneurship for African students and recent graduates. This is also a program that was brand new, launched this year, and happened virtually, inviting youth and recent graduates from all across Africa to complete Queen's foundational entrepreneurship training and launch their own ventures. And in the final competition, Victor was successful in securing funding, which is awesome. So I'm going to share Victor's slides, and Victor is going to present. Just give me a moment. So Victor, if you could just let me know when to switch the slides, that would be great.
Okay, thank you very much. Hi, and thank you for this opportunity to pitch to you. My name is Victor Sisotaba, and I am a University of Cape Town chemical engineering graduate and the founder and managing director of HEMPAD South Africa, which is a merge of the words hemp and pad. And yeah, today I would like to ask everyone to imagine, what if men could menstruate, and how would our world look like? Next slide, please. Now, as you sanitary products would be made free, with medical doctors prioritizing research on menstrual cramps. But that's not reality. The sad reality is that, next slide, please, the more than 800 million menstruators who menstruate daily in the world, and ovulation takes every month. But as the story of a menstruator, if the menstruator becomes pregnant, the process is celebrated. However, if the menstruator does not become pregnant and menstruation takes place, the process is a taboo. There is evidence that shows that this results in menstruators having lower social status, and it further increases stigma around menstruation. Next slide, please. The reality is that there is still inequitable access to environmentally friendly, high quality and affordable sanitary products, especially for the low to middle income class. In South Africa, about one products, and this means that those menstruators end up using alternative options such as toilet paper, newspaper, or even old clothes, which may result in infections. The problem of plastic waste is a concern, and all sanitary products or menstrual products specifically are still taxed by governments. Next slide. It is through these identified problems that we as HEMPAD South Africa are working on providing a hemp-based sanitary products that are antibacterial, will have long-term cost savings, and are reusable and biodegradable, lasting up to 5 years. And we are working on creating an awareness on our social media platforms, and also teaching on menstrual hygiene management education, and also organizing and making donations. And also we are working on having our services online on WhatsApp for a 24/7 online platform assistance. Next slide, please. The team HEMPAD South Africa is made up of 8 individuals currently, with more than 60% being women or menstruators. And I'm the managing director, and we have now 2 CEOs, one for product design and the other for research, which are fashion designer and lawyer, respectively. This has been able to help us to grow our brand and actually make it menstruator focused. These are some of the examples of the awareness that we have created on our social media platforms. Next slide, please. Our target market includes all menstruators. However, our beachhead market is girls and women between the ages of 10 to 24 years from low to middle income class. Them being customers being from menstruators themselves, parents, or even schools. Next slide, please. We are working on having about 2 in the beginning products that we are going to sell. A pad of which is reusable would cost around $9 Canadian, and then the heavy flow one would cost between $10 and $13, and we are working on underwears. this slide, next slide, please. On this next slide, I'm trying to show you how to actually wash a reusable pad. So firstly, the user would simply soak the pad in cold water for about 30 minutes before it with a mild detergent, then sign it by hanging it in the hanging washing line. In South Africa, about 50 million people have access to 50 million people, which is about 90% of the population, have access to water, so they will be able to use our product. Next slide, please. With regards to our milestones, currently sitting on around followers, which is important for us to create more awareness. We have carried out surveys in terms of getting to the feel of the market, and 90% of the people who answered, will they buy 3 pads at about $26 Canadian dollars? They said yes. Other milestones were, of course, winning the DDQIC pitch competition and also participating in the Jim Leach MasterCard Foundation up to the finalist stage. Next slide, please. With regards to the market landscape, we are on operating at relatively high absorbency product with, of course, using hemp, which is a much more sustainable raw material than cotton, and definitely working towards localizing our raw materials. Next slide. In short, this is a great way to invest not only in the business, but also in the awareness space, where we need to teach our communities to destigmatize the whole process of menstruation because it is natural. All I would like to say in closure is kindly please take care of our menstruators and assist in whichever way and whatever way possible.
Awesome. Thank you, Victor. So let's open the floor again to questions.
Okay.
I don't know if you can turn your video on and off, Victor, but we're not getting your video feed anymore.
Oh, even now, I can turn it on again. It's on.
Yeah, I'm not seeing your video feed.
My network, it's okay. I'll leave and
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Victor? That's better.
okay, thank you.
Victor, Susan Morris asked, what is the website? And I missed the sources of funding to date. Could you please talk about your sources of funding and maybe post your website in the chat?
Oh, okay. Currently, we are working on our launch. We haven't launched yet. So we are working on our website. We can be found on our social media platforms, especially Facebook, where we have the largest following. It's HEMPAD South Africa, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and also Facebook. And then in terms of our sources of funding, because in the beginning, the idea came through as a family kind of idea. That's where we're hoping to get our sources of funding, but there has been a potential investor, which is a big cannabis company. It's a pharmaceutical company. They are willing to work with us. However, we are still on an ongoing negotiation situation. It's been going through 2 months now and working through that. We are hoping that because we're trying to integrate also being able to donate. So we are doing donation drives, and we are also working on pivoting because for getting our price of our pad to make it very affordable for the marginalized people of our communities where I come from, we definitely need to reduce the price. And that heavily depends on also what are our other revenue streams, which will be also sharing on our social media platforms soon, because we have found some other ways to deal with this issue. Most people were talking about how to wash the pad and what are some ways we can use there if you are not using a washing machine. So those were some of the things that came through. I'm not sure if I answered well the questions.
I think you did, Victor. Thank you so much. Roger Cal has another question for you, but I'm wondering if, for the sake of time, you could answer him in the chat. The question is, what are the monthly costs for sanitary products in South Africa, and what's the difference versus Canada? So thank you so much for pitching. And if you don't mind answering that question in the chat so we can move on, that would be awesome.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So next I'd like to invite up Johnny Yu, who is the Director of Operations at Mosaic Manufacturing. And Mosaic Manufacturing was actually founded in the Queen's Innovation Center Summer Initiative, which is our flagship program, in 2014. So you've seen ventures at different stages today, and Mosaic Manufacturing is kind of ongoing success. So please, Johnny, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Chloe. So yeah, as Chloe mentioned, I am Johnny Yu. I'm the Director of Operations at Mosaic Manufacturing. We have a lot of Queens grads that we employ at Mosaic, including the three founders, who are Mitch DeBora, Chris LaBelle, and Derek Vode. They're back in 2014. I'm a little bit older. I'm back in 2009 as an applied econ grad. But basically, Mosaic Manufacturing works to create products for the 3D printing space. So back in 2014, at the Queen's Innovation Center, the three founders met and they came up with an idea. Basically, back in the day with the 3D printers, or even still nowadays, with a single extruder nozzle, you can only print with really one material, one color. And what that essentially means is that if you want to print anything, it has to be just that one single color or one single plastic. So what Palette does, which is our original product, is that it splices or bonds these filaments together and then feeds it into your printer so that you can get multiple colors instead of just a single color. So as an example, you can see on the top left, that's what you would see with a normal 3D printer with one nozzle. So you would have just one color, whereas with the Palette, we would splice these filaments together and then feed it into your printer at precise times so that your model comes out all in one piece and printed in multiple colors. So it's not just stuck with colors. You can also print in different materials. So for example, a rigid plastic with a flexible plastic, or water-soluble plastic with another rigid plastic. So basically when you print something like that, you just soak it in water and all the supports would basically fall off of the model and you'd be left with something with a really nice smooth quality to it. So at this point, we've grown that we've had about 5 iterations of Palette. So we went from Palette to Palette Plus and Palette 2, and now we've just recently released and shipped Palette 3. So just to give you a bit of some video as to what Palette does, you'll see that we take the 8 filaments, we fill it into a Palette here, it splices it together, and then it feeds it into the 3D printer, and then you'll see it's going to actually create something where the splices will appear on that model at precise times to create something like you see here. So you see those supports on the side, those will just tear off, and you'll have that final model there. At the end of that video, you saw a piece of software, and that's Canvas. And what Canvas does is basically it takes your model and slices it into little bits so that your printer can read these instructions and lay down the plastic in a precise manner. So with people who aren't familiar with 3D printing, it's similar to an MRI machine in that it takes a model, creates a bunch of slices of it, and each slice are basically coordinates that your printer will use in order to lay down the plastic and then essentially build up from there. With Canvas, we have special options here as well, such as painting and stamping. So this is a brand new feature that a lot of slicers haven't seen before when we first launched it a couple years ago. But you can essentially take a single color model, similar to that blue benchy or blue boat, that we were showing earlier, and you can paint on top of it in our software, and it will actually change it onto your model and provide those instructions to your 3D printer and Palette so that you can actually create a multicolored or multi-material model without having to split up the model in a different software or bring it into something else in order to get these results here. So that's our Canvas software, and that's being able to be used with a lot of 3D printers. So even if you're not using a palette system, you can still use this as a slicer for your 3D printer. So at this point, we've grown to a part where we are actually expanding, and instead of going into just the 3D printing sort of accessory market, we're going into the manufacturing space and looking for more opportunities and where 3D printing and multi-material, multicolor printing can help. So one of the first things that we've launched just recently, and we'll be shipping later next year, is our 3D printer called Element. And what Element does is that there's going to be two versions. One is going to just be the regular Element version, which will have palette built in, which means multi-material, multicolor printing. And then Element HT, which means more high temperature prints using materials like PEC and PEEK and carbon-filled nylon. So you'll see here is just kind of in action here. Those are those water-soluble filaments that I was speaking about earlier. And it'll print it up just like that, and you can soak it in water and have the final result. Lastly, our last product that we're focused on is called Array. And what Array is basically something that you can put on your manufacturing floor. It has 4 printers in there, and it will automatically print, store the prints, and basically run for 72 hours without any operator influence on it. So if you're in a factory, you need to run something over the weekend, you can put an array on, set which prints you want to do, and then back on the weekend, or once you return from the weekend, you'll have a storage cart basically full of parts that you've wanted to print. So you can see the use of this in a lot of factories for prototyping, or if you just want to print a large volume of parts. Because it's so simple to print and because of the labor costs being so low, the price per part is actually quite low in terms of what you can output from an array system compared to the usual ways of manufacturing, which could be sending it to China, getting a mold, having those parts sent back. As you can imagine, the costs can be very, very different. So here's just a quick look at how Array works. Basically taking your prints, putting it into our storage cart, refilling the printers so that they can start again, and then the next projects will start. So that's the Array system. We have another one called the Array Studio system, which will essentially be 4 of these array systems next to each other. So basically, 16 printers running at in sync, up to 72 hours without any interference. So that is also going to be released sometime next year. But we couldn't have done it without the support from Queens, and which is why we wanted to return and really share what we've done so far since 2014. As Chloe mentioned, our 3 founders met at the Innovation Center. We still come back and try and do hackathons as much as we can. We just try and contribute as much as we can to Queens for everything that they've given to myself and to other members of our team. But thank you for your time. I'd love to hear any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you, Johnny. So we'll leave the floor open for another couple of minutes for questions. We've arrived close to the end of our itinerary for this afternoon, but we'll hang on here for a couple more minutes in case you have any questions for Mosaic. Thanks, Meredith. Meredith is saying, thank you to Ryan, Victor, and Johnny for sharing your pitches, such diverse and interesting products. Thanks for joining us today. Some congratulations from Mona as well. So we do have a question for you, Johnny. What kind of models do customers make on your printers?
You're not really limited to anything. As long as you can design something in CAD, you can basically print it. So we have people who are hobbyists who print after work, and they like to print gadgets for themselves or things for around the home. And we also have other people who print things. There's a foundation called Enable, and what they do is that they actually print prosthetics for children who may have lost a limb for whatever reason. And so they use our product to make these special designs for their customers. so that they're, we've seen like princess themed ones, Spider-Man themed ones. And then with the array system, we've seen a lot of interest from a lot of different types of manufacturing. So you can imagine, car companies would like it for prototyping. Athletic companies use it for things like shoes. So there's a lot of different applications that can be used with array, with palette, and with element.
Cool to see what kind of manufacturing applications the array ecosystem unlocks. I think that is going to be huge for Canadian manufacturers. Ryan wants to know, are you experimenting, Johnny, with any other materials?
Sure. So the most common materials for 3D printing are things like LA, PETG, which are rigid materials, TPU, which is like a flexible material, the water-soluble materials that we've spoken about as well. For the high temperature ones, there are some high temperature filaments that we are testing with. So things I have mentioned in the past, like carbon felled nylon, PEEK and PEC filaments. And those ones just have a higher printing temperature, but they're also very, very strong. So we have been testing with a wide range of filaments. If you want more information, we actually have filaments, or will have filaments available through the Mosaic line on our website, mosaicmfg.com. And if you go under the products tab, you should see materials, and then you'll see actually a full list of materials that we've been testing with, and also a line of materials that we'll be releasing in the near future.
Well, I'd like to wrap up today's session by saying a huge thank you to our panelists, Johnny, Victor, and Ryan. Thank you so much for pitching and showcasing all the innovation and talent that we have at Queen's towards entrepreneurship. And thank you all for attending. Please be sure to fill out the post-event survey, and happy homecoming. I hope you all enjoy your weekend.